This is how you can see the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Who has seen these goals before this presentation? Yeah, that's more. Now these goals are the Sustainable Development Goals. They are 17, and they are also found in the Agenda 2030. It's called Agenda 2030 because by 2030 they want to make sure that these goals are achieved. How many years are left now? Currently, 2023 is the half time on heading towards the achievement of these goals. Now, the uniqueness of this agenda is that it applies to all nations. Before the Agenda 2030, before this agenda with the 17 goals, there were the Millennium Development Goals. Who remembers them? Millennium Development Goals. It's called Millennium because they were introduced in the year 2000, which was the millennium, and they ended in 2015. Now those Millennium Development Goals, they were focusing on just one part of the world. They were also called MDGs, and their development approach was very one-sided and meant to be something for countries of the so-called Global South, or known as developing countries only. Other countries didn't need such kind of development with the other goals. But now a new approach that considers the interconnectedness of our world and of issues today made this new agenda apply to all nations. If we take climate change or peace, for instance, these issues cannot be treated as belonging to a particular part of the world, but rather as issues that requires the engagement and the action of each state. The categories of North and South do not apply anymore. No one is able to tell where the North ends and the South begins. Far from being today's geographical references, they are more of becoming sociological and economic categories. The so-called North and South run today through all countries, cities, and villages, regardless of the place they are located geographically. Another thing that makes the agenda special and different from the other agendas is that for the first time, it is addressing the economy as being a big player and part of the problem in the discourse of sustainability or fragility of this world. Now, this is a really nice model that I like, the sustainability model from the Stockholm Resilience Center. It has divided those 17 goals into 3 categories. 3 categories of sustainability. Now, I would like you to always have this in mind when you speak of development. These 3 categories have to be considered. The environment, you can see it is the biggest part on this model. We keep to forget that it was also the first thing that was created before human. So it is the first part, and you can see it includes land, animals who are in water and above water, and the climate. And then we have another piece on top. You can imagine a wedding cake. They also call this a wedding cake model. Yeah, wedding cakes now. That's a nice thinking, a sweet thinking, but yeah. So you have the second part, that is the society, it's the people. All the problems that we see, that we witness, the sickness, the hunger, the pandemic, yeah. Then you have the top part, It's a small, that small cake that's on top, that's the economy. But is it so small? No. It's small, yes, but it's on top still. It decides a lot and cuts through all those pieces. So, thinking of development, try to always imagine this or have this cake in mind. How does it fit together? If it works well, if you think of squeezing it, you can get a circle, but yet the center would be the economy. No matter where, how you shift it, it's either the center or the top. So it's very important to also have that in mind. What type of economy do we want? Because when we started out in 1800, we saw what drove this change. Industries. Industries have something to do with economy. So I introduced this model to you, and one thing I would also like to add to this agenda, the agenda has a slogan or a motto. Who has heard of this motto, leave no one behind? Leave no one behind. The Agenda 2030 comes with this slogan. This agenda was adopted in 2015 by 193 UN member states, and the slogan, leave no one behind, has also a moral foundation that promotes a sense of solidarity and belonging. This alone is a strong reason for churches to participate in this effort. It can be very well linked to many values and commitments that are also important for churches and faith communities. Let's go back to the first book in the Bible, the story of creation. God created the world in 7 days. Who did he start with creating first? Sometimes people without thinking would say, of course, Adam, man. Yeah? But is that so? You know? I found this really nice image that shows the 7 days of creation, and each day they show what was created and where is man placed. Last. Because what did God do on the last day, on the 7th day? He rested. So there's a lot that came before man, right? Yeah, and it was not by mistake. He first made the environment, split waters and earth, made plants, created animals, and lastly, he made humans. We tend to forget the tasks and responsibilities given to us humans as God entrusted us with the environment, his creation, our home. More than a decade ago, religious actors were generally not that important to the United Nations. We must say that too, as partners. And there was often a degree of distrust and even rejection of these faith communities. Today, religious actors are explicitly recognized as partners, as important partners, and their importance is strongly emphasized by UN institutions, the World Bank, and national governments. So religions, faith communities play a big role also in the development aspect. That is not something not to be forgotten or taken for granted. To this end, there are now several initiatives to strengthen partnerships with faith-based actors in the areas of development. So even governments have realized it. They've been realizing it, but maybe they didn't show it. But they would approach religious actors, institutions, diaconical institutions, and talk to them. How do we go about this? Because they know what the contribution is and how strong it is, and the commitment for development, not just for development, for peace and other humanitarian assistance. Churches have a long-standing history in engaging in the public space at local, national, and global levels. That's why we're here. This is also a manifestation of this interconnectedness of churches. through reflection, communication, advocacy, and diaconical action. Many churches have established themselves as important actors in the provision of social and development services and as advocates for global human values, such as gender equality, peace, and justice. They distinguish themselves through their permanence of their presence, an often high level of credibility and wide reach at community level, including to the remotest areas where governments may be absent. Now, this permanency is something that distinguishes religious and faith-based actors. We don't say we're going to work on this until 2030. Yes, there's going to be a plan, but it's something that has a permanence because of the dedication. Now, despite the strong work being carried out by churches in relation to individual sustainable development goals, many of church members or church organizations are not familiar with the UN processes, with the development policies that are being established, and the language used in politics of agendas. So there is an importance to also find a way to understand that. So in order to also be a player in this development aspect. This is when Waking the Giant can step in and look for measures to empower local churches to seize this opportunity, to network, to strengthen their role and to connect with government and international agencies and positioning themselves in this development process. This development process that also affects them, people, their work. So, one thing should be clear. The calling of churches to engage in issues of peace, justice, poverty alleviation does not derive from the existence of the agenda or any agenda 2030. The church's calling to engage in all these areas derives from its much deeper and unique calling to participate in God's mission, in which all these issues are important. We've been hearing "leave no one behind" for nearly 2 millennia, not just since 2015. The church does not need Agenda 2030 to be active in all these areas. It has its reasons to be active by what it believes. It is a matter of its mission. And Waking the Giant builds on that understanding. It is not about replacing the calling of the church and with the agenda that will only last until 2030. The goal is to connect what churches are doing because of their calling to participate in God's mission and see where they can contribute, where they can become part of a cross-sectoral local action to better address the issues of justice, peace, and well-being of all people. Thank you.